You know, there's a really specific kind of pain we almost never talk about. It's not the pain of wanting something and never getting it. No, it's the pain of finally getting it and then watching yourself in slow motion just completely destroy it. Think about it. Maybe for you, it was a relationship that felt, well, real. The connection was finally there. And then, for some reason you couldn't even explain out loud, you blew it up. Or maybe it was a project, a career move, something with real momentum. And right when things were going your way, you just stopped. This pattern is so cruel because it doesn't hit you when you're down. It strikes right at the moment things are about to become everything you always said you wanted.
Now, most of us, we tell ourselves a story about this, that we're unworthy or broken or just not good enough. But according to the work of Carl Jung, that explanation, it just describes the wound. It doesn't get anywhere near the real cause. Okay, let's dive into this, because what's actually going on is way, way deeper.
So think of what we're about to do here as a diagnosis, not a prescription for a fix. We're going to map out the why behind this pattern, and if this stuff resonates with you, well, you're going to see just how deep these roots really go. All right, first things first, let's get the most common assumption off the table right now. This is not about what you deserve. It's not some moral failing on your part or some deep character flaw. The mechanism that's kicking in here is so much more primal than that. And this is the absolute heart of it. A part of your psyche has quietly decided that the person you've become, the whole identity you built just to survive, can't actually live the life you want. So as you get closer to that amazing new life, that old identity faces total annihilation. It doesn't see it as self-sabotage. It sees it as self-preservation of a self that has to go. To really understand who's driving this bus, we need to talk about the ego, but not in the way we usually toss that word around. Jung saw the ego not as your buddy, and definitely not as your true self, but as your very first and most sophisticated prison. Now, here's what's so fascinating. The ego's prime directive, its main job, was never to make you happy. It wasn't about fulfillment or joy. Its one and only job is to keep the current structure going, to keep the story of you rolling along uninterrupted no matter what it costs. It will always, always choose familiar suffering over unfamiliar freedom. And this little chart here just lays it out perfectly. The ego, that's the narrator in your head, right? It's just the center of what you're conscious of. But the self, that's the whole shebang. It's the totality of who you are, including all that unlived potential, all the parts of you still in the shadows. The ego is just one chapter, the self is the whole library. The problem starts when the chapter thinks it's the entire book. See, the ego was designed to be a temporary structure, like a lifeboat, to get you through the choppy waters of childhood and help you fit in. But for so many of us, we become fiercely loyal to the lifeboat. We mistake it for the shore, and we spend our whole lives protecting a structure that was never ever meant to be permanent. So where did this fortress come from in the first place? Well, the ego doesn't just build on random ground. It builds its walls directly on top of a core wound. And over time, that wound becomes the actual architecture of your identity. Jung called this protective layer the persona, which comes from the Latin word for a theatrical mask. It's literally the face you learn to show the world to be safe, to be accepted, to get by. It's the collection of personality traits that worked for you in your environment. And look, everybody has a persona. It's a totally necessary tool for getting along in the world. The danger kicks in when you forget you're even wearing it. The strategies that once kept you safe start to feel like who you actually are. An identity that was built to avoid pain becomes completely incompatible with real happiness, because that happiness threatens the whole structure. So what is the ego actually protecting you from? What is it so terrified of? Well, this isn't some vague, shadowy fear. Underneath every single act of self-sabotage, there is a specific, identifiable terror that the ego is working like crazy to help you avoid. Okay, let's break these down. First up, the terror of greatness. As long as you don't fully succeed, you get to keep this romantic, beautiful story of your potential, of what you could have been. Real success destroys that powerful excuse forever. Second, the fear of being seen. I mean, really seen. Real intimacy means the mask has to come off, and the ego will do almost anything to avoid exposing that fragile self it's been protecting for so long. Third is the terror of total responsibility. When you actually get the life you want, you lose all your excuses. You can't blame your parents, your past, your circumstances anymore. From that point on, every failure is all on you. Fourth, and this is a weird one, the fear of losing the wound. If your whole identity has been organized around a struggle or a past trauma, who are you without it? Healing can feel absolutely terrifying, like you're erasing yourself. Fifth is unconscious loyalty. If your family, the people you love, struggled, your success can feel like a deep betrayal, like you're abandoning them by having a different life. And finally, the sixth and the deepest terror of all, the ego's death. Real transformation isn't just about improving the old you, it is the complete dissolution of that old structure. And the ego, quite correctly, experiences this as a death sentence. But here's the thing, these terrors don't just show up and announce themselves. They're sneaky. They arrive disguised as your own rational, clear-headed decisions. Your ego is fluent in the language of your values, and believe me, it uses that fluency against you with surgical precision.
So, how do you tell the difference? How do you catch this thing in real time, especially when the reasoning to back out, to end the relationship, to quit the job sounds so incredibly convincing? Okay, now this right here, this is the tell, the emotional signature. When you make a decision that is genuinely right for you, even if it's really hard, the underlying emotion is almost always grief, a real sadness for what's being lost. But when the ego engineers an escape, the overwhelming feeling is relief, a clean, cool feeling of, phew, dodged a bullet. That relief, that's the ego's telltale sign.
And you really got to pay attention to the timing. The ego is totally fine with you struggling. It loves when you're striving and working towards a goal that actually reinforces its identity. It only steps in at the threshold, at the precise moment when staying the course would mean you'd have to become someone new. And this brings us to the final, and let's be honest, the most challenging part of this whole diagnosis. If the ego's sabotage runs this deep, what on earth can you do? Well, the answer isn't about more willpower or just trying harder. It's about a choice.
Jung was crystal clear about this. The process of becoming your true self, what he called individuation, it's not about putting a fresh coat of paint on the old house. It's about letting the old house burn to the ground. The ego can't be polished up to come with you. It has to be surrendered.
So when you finally start to change for real, it won't feel easy. It's probably going to feel like you're grieving. And that grief isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It is the perfectly accurate emotional response to a real death. The identity that built itself around your wound is losing its entire reason for being. You have to be willing to let it die. And so this is the question this whole explainer leaves you with. This is where the real work begins. And you have to get specific. What story about yourself, about your limits, your wounds, your loyalties, what story only survives as long as you don't fully heal, as long as you don't fully try, as long as you don't fully live? Because you can't release what you are not willing to see. And choosing to finally see it, that's the beginning of everything.